Hello, I'm Sarah from Sutton Schoolswork. Welcome to our Assemblies online. Now, each week we're going to be bringing you a Bible story, a thought about what it means for Christians, a question or two for you to think about, and a fun activity for you to do as well. So are you sitting comfortably? Well, let's begin.
Now this week we are thinking about being generous. And you may have noticed that Becca, Sarah's flying Flappy Bird friend, wasn't with her in last week's video. Now that's because I thought it would be generous to invite her over here to visit my Flappy Bird friend, Harley. And she's brought another friend of her own with her, who is Christopher. Say hello to everyone, you three. Thankfully, birds can't catch the virus, so they don't have to worry about staying apart like we do. But having said that, it does feel a little bit like an aviary in here, or a zoo. Christopher, do you think possibly you could climb off my shoulder? Yes, I'm not really sure the other shoulder is much of an improvement. Now, being generous is all about sharing, so look, I've got them some games out here, and I've got them some party food. And just as a treat, because too many are bad for your health, they've even got some sweets. Now I've checked for allergies and we're all okay with... What's the matter? What do you mean you haven't had any sweets? What, not even one? Why not? Why? Holly, how many have you... Holly, don't pretend you didn't hear me. We all know that you did. How many have you eaten? How many of those have you eaten? Did you eat every single one of those sweets? Well, that wasn't very kind or generous, not sharing with Becca or Christopher, was it? What's the matter now? And now you feel sick because you've eaten so many. Well, maybe that's a lesson you need to remember for next time. Don't worry, you two. I hope she'll share the games. Sometimes it can be really hard to share, especially if it's something we really enjoy having or doing ourselves. But if we don't share, well, we might learn the hard way. Mightn't we, Harley? What's that? You now need to go to the bathroom. Well, I think Harley's probably learnt her lesson already. But Rick is now going to tell us a story about a man who really wasn't very good at sharing. But he didn't only not like sharing sweets, he didn't like sharing anything at all. And if you've been following our Assemblies online this term, you'll know that this is another parable. That special kind of story that Jesus told to help people understand about God and his kingdom. Over to you, Rick.
I would really love it if you could help me to tell this story. Every time that I say the words, I know I will tear down my barn, and could you repeat back to me, could you shout back to me these words? Build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. I think we need to have a practice of that. So every time that I say, I know I will tear down my barn, and you're going to say back, build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. So be ready to say that back, and I think it's just time for me to go and get changed. Okay, voiceover person. There was once a man. Joe's the name. I am very, very rich. Joe was a farmer who owned a large amount of land where he would grow crops. One day, Joe came up with a great idea. I've decided to see if I can get even more crops than usual to grow on my land. So, he did some experiments in his laboratory. He mixed a bit of this with a dash of that, and eventually Joe created his own very, very special fertiliser. Joe's a professional, so please don't try this at home. He gave his fertiliser a name. I think I'll call it Joseph's Juice. Well, for the first year, he decided to use just 1 spoonful of Joseph's juice on his crops. I know what I'll do. I'll just use 1 teaspoon of my Joseph's juice. Here you are, my little beauties. And when everything had time to grow, it brought in a big harvest. He wondered what he should do. This crop's far too big for my barn. Well, he had workers who could do with a raise. Perhaps he could give some of the crops to them. But instead, Joe thought, I know, I will tear down my barn and build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. All together, build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. So that's what he did. Joe built a bigger barn. The next year, he decided to use 2 spoonfuls of Joseph's juice on his crops. I think I'll use 2 teaspoons of my juice this time. Here you go. 1, 2. There you go, my beauties. And when everything had time to grow, it brought in an even bigger harvest. A harvest that was too big for his new barn. Oh no, this crop is far too big even for my bigger barn. What should he do? Well, there were some people in need in his town. Perhaps he could give some of the crops to them. But instead, Joe thought, I know, I'll tear down my barn and build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. All together, build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. So that's what Joe did. He built an even bigger barn, an enormous barn. The next year, he decided to pour all of his juice on his crops. I think that this year, I'll use all the rest of my Joseph's juice on you, my little beauties. And when everything had time to grow, it brought in the biggest harvest he had ever seen. Oh my word! All that crop's even too much for even my bigger barn. I know what I'll do. I'll tear down my barn and build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. All together, build a bigger barn, build a big barn, build a bigger barn, build a great big barn. So that's what he did. Joe built an enormous barn and he filled it with his crops, his riches, everything he could need. So he thought, I've now got enough good things stored up in my barn to last me for many years. I'm going to rest, take things easy, enjoy myself, drink, eat, be merry, and enjoy the rest of my life. But that night, Joe got sick, and then he died. And all that he had just stayed sat in his great big barn.
So there we go. That rich man was so worried about his crops that he kept them and stored them away all for himself. Imagine how much of a difference he might have made to other people who were hungry if he'd been willing to share them with them.
As Christians, we believe this story tells us that every good thing comes from God, and we should use what we have to bless others. Nothing beats that feeling you have inside when you know you've shared something with someone else and it's made them really happy.
Now it's question time again, and how many questions do we always have? That's right, we have 3. And as usual, why not pause this video after each one, have a think about the answer in your head, or maybe write it down. If you're lucky enough to have an adult or a sibling with you who you can talk it over with, you could do that too.
Why do you think the rich man kept all his crops? Why do you think sharing is important? What are some of the ways you could be generous to other people?
Now it's activity time again, and this week we are making something to remind ourselves to be generous to others. What's that, Becca? Yes, Jesus said that real treasure isn't gold or silver we own, but things we do and share with other people that make them really happy. So why not make yourself a treasure chest and fill it with little slips of paper, saying who you're going to share things with and what it is you're going to share with them. You might already have a box you can adapt. Maybe something that used to contain cereal, or eggs, or toys. Of course, you can decorate it to make it look like a treasure box with wrapping paper and with stickers. As long as you ask an adult first, have a look around your home and see if you can find anything you already have that could work as a perfect treasure chest. But don't worry if you haven't got any of those things, because you can make a treasure chest out of paper, just like this. I wonder what ideas we could write down to put inside our treasure chest. What's that, Harley? You've written down your ideas already? Wow, should we have a look? I will share my games and toys. Maybe you've got a brother or a sister at home who you could share playing with at the moment. Leave the last biscuit for someone else. Or at least, ask them if they'd like it. Always ask an adult before sharing any food in case of allergies. You can also be generous with your time. Why not be generous to mum, dad or an adult at home and offer to share some of the chores they have to do? Oh, are you going to do the washing up for me, Harley? Oh, thank you very much. Why not try choosing one of your ideas to try each day? What's that? Oh, you're off to share some of your games right now. Well, remember, it's not about the winning, it's about sharing an enjoyable time together, isn't it? See you later. Phew, that's a relief. Those birds were quite a handful, or shoulderful. That's it for this week, but don't forget, use the good things that you have to share and bless others. After all, if you had to choose one or the other, would you rather have lots of money or rather have lots of friends? So, get sharing and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. All you need is a sheet of paper, you can choose any colour you like, and you need to fold it into 3 equal portions. If you want to be very careful, you can measure down the side to make sure, roughly, each portion is 10 centimetres long. When you've folded your 3 sections, like that, fold over the top 2 sections, just like that, and create for yourself 2 diagonal lines between the corner at the fold and the bottom. There's one, and here's the other. It doesn't matter if they're not exactly the same, as long as you use a ruler to make sure they're straight. Next, draw a line along between the 2 points, but on the lower page, So keep the fold down and draw your line along like that. And now draw your lower lines to match from the end of your line that was horizontal, diagonally like that, and diagonally like that. Now all you have to do is cut along the lines on the upper fold . And depending upon whether you've done transformations yet in school, you might want to make your treasure chest look 3D by adding a couple of vertical lines down to the bottom, a couple more diagonal lines between the bottom and the lower fold, and cutting out those two right-angled triangles as well. But don't worry if that looks too complicated for you yet at your age, because it'll still look like a treasure chest whether you do that bit or not. Now all you have to do is decorate your treasure chest with as many lines and decorations as you want, and you might want to write your name in big letters on the middle. And here's a finished example. All I've done is decorated it with some stars, with a Bible verse, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, and then you can open up your treasure chest and stick a little post-it note inside to say what treasures you will share with the people you know.